The episode Mr. Ring for Kolchak, the Night Stalker, is one of those, and I suppose the UFO episode could be considered that as well, but certainly the elements here with it, and I don't mean the structure of it where it's bookended, where the entire story has already happened by the time the show opens, and it's basically Carl recording the events into his tape recorder. I guess that's how he did his journal or whatever, for all the stories that Vincenzo was never going to let him publish. They're all documented on his tapes, I suppose. Hey, there could be a sequel series. And like, poor Kolchak, he's no longer with us, but I don't know, a nephew or whatever discovers the old tapes, and it's the Night Stalker tapes. And it turns out this leads to new stories of supernatural and stuff. Yeah, never mind. Anyway, Night Stalker has always been credited as being an inspiration for the X-Files. And you can understand some of the elements are very similar. It's, all this paranormal stuff. And also you have a protagonist that, for the most part, nobody believes. And he's kind of on his own and all that kind of thing. And so those are the similarities. Other than the police not liking him and giving him troubles and all that, it's not quite the same as it was for Fox Mulder and X-Files and all that. But when it deals with government conspiracy and the like, this particular episode does play into that, especially with why the bookends are presented in this way. It's because Kolchak is trying to get his thoughts down as fast as he can because he's been drugged, and a drug that will make him forget what has happened. And of course, this always comes into play with different theories and whatnot, especially when it comes to like UFOs or any kind of secret government program. Is there a means by which they can basically induce amnesia, and you're not quite sure what happened and this sort of thing. Of course, the UFO theories of abduction is like all the victims of that. The aliens know how to extract that from your memories, and they might have nightmares about it, but they can never get a clear picture or what have you. But this doesn't involve aliens, but it involves a new life form, if you will. Yeah, an android is what Mr. Ring is. So we've got this android, basically. It looks like the android of the 70s, used to like $6 Million Man or Star Trek or whatever. The face would pop off and there would be this circuit board underneath. So that's basically what you got here. He wants a face, so he goes the Michael Myers route and steals a mask and gets some funeral home makeup to try to make it look a flesh-like face. But the deal is, this is a government-supported secret project of developing an automaton. And for whatever reason, they decided, perhaps because he was gaining too much sentience or conscience of his own, they said, hey, we want super deadly soldiers or whatever. And so they ordered the scientists working on it to just kill the machine, to turn it off and dismantle it, now that they were canceling the project. The android didn't care for that, so he kills the scientist and then goes on this rampage of, stealing the mask and the makeup and clothes, stuff like that. Eventually, he comes upon this female scientist who had left the program, but I guess the android saw her as its mother. And eventually, Carl Kolchak is, sniffing this story out, thinks there's something, more to it. Of course he would. Snoops around and eventually tracks down this woman. There's some funny scenes with her. There's some funny scenes even with the dead scientist's drunken wife. Part of the problem is keeping the secrets is that she just blabs everything because she's drunk all the time. And their marriage wasn't all that great, and that sort of thing. But anyway, Ends up, he tracks her down, and of course Mr. Ring is there. She explains the whole thing. And the android, yes, is gaining some sort of sentience. So that comes to the question that Star Trek delves into all the time. You know, is this life when there seems to be a sort of an intelligence there? And the android, or is it just responding to its programming and has developed a self-preservation sense? And when there's any threat, it reacts to it and what have you. But ultimately, the military tracks him down. Carl tries to talk him out of it. You know, they're not going to listen to him. It seems the military doesn't like him either. And ultimately, they try to seize the android, but he's not having any of that, so they blow him away. So it closes on the other bookend at the end with Carl having narrated this or recorded it. And he's like, I don't know how much of this I'll remember or how much of it I'll even believe when I replay this and that sort of thing. But knowing his life and what he's already been through, I mean, he fought a couple of vampires and a werewolf. This is child's play compared to that. So he probably wouldn't believe it, but he's got no evidence or anything. It's not like he can go to Vincenzo and say, hey, we got to publish this. The military's developing killer androids. And, of course, that's the cautionary part about it, is that this technology will be in the hands of those who would want to use it. You know, and obviously for military interests, they were looking for like a super soldier, if you will. And foolishly thinking they could control it. And what if they couldn't? And that sort of thing. And it's the same old dangers about, you know, artificial intelligence, you know. What? It's that old fantasy like that. Oh. Oh. Yeah, how about that? Yeah. Well, nobody listened to those warnings then. And certainly not from... you know, an episode of Night Stalker, but oh well, what are you gonna do? But in the case of Carl Kolchak, his story couldn't get published. No one would believe it, and he can't really recall it anymore because they drugged him after all this was over with a drug that caused him to forget. Now, there's certain anesthetics that can make you forget some things, but not, you know, days and weeks of things, I wouldn't think, you know. So, but hey, it's top secret stuff, so it's able to shut people up without having to deal with the mess of making someone disappear and all that, you know. When you can just make them forget what they know. So that's what they did. Carl managed to record it, but he's going to go to bed and wake up and, oh, what's this? Play it and go, oh, come on, what was I on? Oh. Yeah, he's going to believe every word of it. He's just not going to remember any of it. Of course, probably these days there would have been a follow-up to it where he tracks this down and then, you know, blows it all up and gets in even more trouble and, you know, that kind of thing. But, yeah, why bother? So, there we go. It is interesting, and I thought of this as to note it, that it was more of this type of thing of like where, you know, Fox Mulder would run afoul of the government almost all the time. But here you see it depicted much earlier on in the show that inspired X-Files, The Night Stalker, where Carl ran afoul of a top secret project and got his brains scrambled by who knows what to make him forget it. But he had his trusty tape recorder, and somewhere in his files or whatever's a tape that details the story of Mr. Ring.